Okay. Bedsheet dress, because you can thrift a bedsheet and make yourself a dress. Yeah, I know. Groundbreaking. Cotton is perfect. A viscose blend is totally fab too. Just make sure the fabric has structure. Choose a wrinkle-resistant fabric, because ironing this dress, literal nightmare. Just wait and look at that. Huge difference, massive. And I'm using 2 different pieces of black cotton from my stash. You also need interfacing. You can use fancy pre-cut 2 cm or 3/4 of an inch wide strips for the pocket opening, or not, you can cut them yourself. Matching thread and a contrasting for basting, which is optional. Elastic thread, 2 cm or 3/4 of an inch wide elastic, 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch wide elastic. Universal sewing machine needles size 80, and optional extras: plastic snap patterns for removable straps, thin ribbon aka pocket leash to keep them in place. I'll be showing how to make this dress using just a regular sewing machine, but I'll let you know whenever a serger could make your life easier. Sergers are amazing, but let's be real, they are so expensive. You can get the pattern on Etsy. It's called a bedsheet dress. Link is down below. And there is a launch sale happening for a few days. Quick question before we start. When you buy patterns, do you need different hide options? The download files will be like a bunch of zipped files. But if that's something you queens want, I'm all ears. I also typically offer 2 sewing options. Do you ever find it a bit too much maybe? Does it feel overwhelming, or if you actually like having the choices like I do? Please let me know, I want to make it better for you. When you get the pattern, don't cut everything out of the fabric straight away. You'll be able to decide on some parts later on. But it's all written on pattern pieces anyway, so it's okay. After cutting all the needed pieces out of the fabric, add a few guidelines to make your life easier. Connect armscye button notches on the wrong side of all 4 bodice and sleeve pieces. On the front of both bodice pieces, draw a line between the notches that mark the start and end of the shirring section. On the bottom is optional. I did it now, but they disappeared by the time I needed them, so I'll just remark them in the mid-video. I also labeled all pattern pieces so you can see which is which. F for the front, and X is the wrong side. Same labeling goes for the back pieces, but with B. On sleeves, 1 notch means front, 2 notches back. Okay, everything seems to be ready, so just let's get sewing. Sewing a French seam pocket can be a bit of a tedious task. Make at least 1 as a test run. But even before that, start by making sure the pocket is wide enough for your hand. The distance from the pinky to the thumb is a great start. Draw a curve about the size of your hand, and how much room do you need? If you're planning to carry any specific items, adjust the dimensions as necessary to ensure everything fits. Oh, and don't forget to adjust all pieces involved according to the changes. For some reason, part of the original footage mysteriously vanished into the sewing void, so yeah, you'll see fabric of 2 different colors. I hope it won't be too confusing for you. So for now, you'll need front and back bodice, 2 pairs of pocket back mirrors, so it's 4 pieces total, and 4 strips of fusible interfacing. Grab the front bodice and front pocket pieces. Start repressing lightweight fusible interfacing to the wrong side of the front bodice and the wrong side of the front pocket. This gives the pocket structure and prevents distortion. Next, mark the pocket opening. Begin at the notches and draw 2 1.2 cm or half an inch lines. Then connect those lines to outline the pocket shape. Right side bodice, right side pocket. Align the notches and pin in place. Stitch directly along the pocket outline you just marked and be sure to backstitch at each corner. Stitch up to the corner, backstitch return to the point, rotate, stitch forward, back again, and then continue along the path. Once stitched, trim the seam allowance down to 3 mm or 1/8 of an inch and clip into the corner. Don't you dare to cut through stitches! Turn the pocket to the inside so the wrong sides are kissing. Mwah! Wiggle those corners to loosen them up, and then just press everything flat. When pressing, roll the seam slightly inward so it looks neat from the outside. Outline the pocket border 5 mm or 1/4 of an inch from the pocket edge on the right side of the garment and top stitch. Grab the back pocket and place it on top of the front pocket exactly how it should sit when finished. Hold the edges of the pocket and flip the back piece over like this. Pin or baste the layers together. Before stitching, make sure the pocket back edges are aligned. If they are not, just simply trim the excess. Stitch at 5 mm or 1/4 of an inch, sewing slowly around the curved edge for precision and control. Trim the seam allowance down to 3 mm or 1/8 of an inch, and then move to a shape-shaping ceremony. I like to gently push the edge from the inside before a smoothing session. To finish, sew a final line of stitching 7 mm or 1/4 of an inch from the curved edge and give it a thorough press. The inside is beautiful and, more importantly, strong and durable. So whatever you stitch inside is totally safe. Well, at least if a criminal is a moth. If you choose to skip the French seam for the sides, that's not a problem, at all. Simply pin the front and back bodice pieces right sides together, aligning the edges carefully. Stitch with a 1.2 cm or 1/2 an inch seam allowance, making sure your stitching passes exactly through these points at the pocket opening. Important, as you pin, be sure to move the pocket opening out of the way to avoid accidentally stitching it closed. And to finish the seam cleanly, serge or zigzag the raw edge to prevent fraying. Grab the back bodice and place on top of the front bodice, wrong sides together, and pin, aligning the side seams and, most importantly, notches. Pocket notches. Other notches are important, don't get me wrong, but you can ignore those as long as the pocket notches can be together forever and ever. Stitch at 5 mm, which is 1/4 of an inch, and give it a little trim, especially if your fabric is fraying or bulky. And clip any bulky corners where layers meet to help reduce thickness if there are any. Open the fabric and press the seam open, then fold the fabric so the right sides are together and closing the trimmed seam, and press again. Pin the seam in place, paying extra attention to the pocket region. Insert a pin right where the pocket border begins. Blood. I'm sorry. Go through both layers. Let's call the stab wound coconut. Pin through that point, it's important. Then pin the middle of the pocket, but make sure you're avoiding the opening itself. Push it aside a little, like so. Stitch at 7 mm till you reach the first coconut. Slow down. The needle should go exactly through the point where the pin is. I actually hand turned the wheel. You see that? Perfection! And that is how it looks on the right side. The pocket border is picking out just the right amount. And the pocket opening is actually opening. So yeah, congrats! Guidelines for the shirring appear to be a little bit sharp at side seams, so just go ahead and smooth them out. Pick elastic thread that suits your needs. I'm using Madeira elastic. Well, it's not as efficient in gathering compared to the thicker elastic thread. You can clearly see the difference in density. Besides, choice of fabric plays a significant role too. Lightweight cotton gathers more easily compared to heavyweight cotton. I use the same elastic thread for both, by the way. But it's universal! I don't need to go on a scavenger hunt for a matching elastic thread. But see what works best for you. And if your final result feels a bit loose, well, that's okay. I'll show you how to reinforce it with extra elastic at the end. Hand wind the elastic thread onto the bobbin, keeping slight tension as you go. Use regular thread on the top and elastic in the bobbin. Set your stitch length to 3-4 mm. Longer stitches create more gathers. Reduce the machine tension slightly by 1 or 2 points, but definitely test the settings to see what actually works for your machine. Start stitching along the line, backstitching in the beginning and the end. But when you complete the whole circle, don't just overlap exactly, no. Shift your stitching line slightly downwards. And here's a stitching guide. As you sew, guide the fabric so that each row is spaced roughly the width of your presser foot, and stretch the fabric while stitching. When you reach the end, stitch directly into the previous row to end this vicious cycle. And backstitch the shit out of it, of course. To triple secure the elastic, I also tie the loose threads together and knot them tightly around the threads. Finally, gently press so that the elastic can fully cinch in. And that's it. So, moving on. When it comes to sewing sleeves, pick one: serge seam or French seam. Fold the sleeve right sides together and pin. Stitch at 1.2 cm, which is half an inch, and serge the raw edge. Press the seam flat and you are done. French seam, though, requires more steps, as you already know. Fold the sleeve wrong sides together, pin, stitch at 5 mm or 1/4 inch and trim. Now fold the sleeve right sides together, enclosing the raw edge inside the fold, and stitch at 7 mm, which is again 1/4 inch. Then press the final seam flat. Done. Now for the fun part, putting it all together. Grab bodice and sleeve. 1 notch indicates the front, 2 notches means it's back. Works for all patterns, it's basically an industry standard. Place the sleeve and bodice right sides together, aligning the side seams. Seam of the bodice goes to the back and sleeves towards the front. Insert a pin directly into the stitch line. It's done to create a continuous transition of the side seam. First pin right at the seam. Second and third add notches, front and back. Ignore this confusing line for now, it was a mistake. Back to the pins, distribute the rest evenly. If using a serger, just go ahead and serge the armhole. Seam allowance is 7 mm or 1/4 inch. A clean alternative, bias tape. And that's the part where my little mistake becomes handy. 2 cm or 3/4 inch above the notch. Position the bias tape along the marked line and pin in place. Then unpin one and repin through all 3 layers: bodice, sleeve and bias tape. Repeat the process around the armhole, except at the side seam. It's stuck as a bug in a rock. Stitch around the arm side 7 mm or 1/4 inch, which is equivalent of a presser foot width. Trim the seam allowance down to 5 mm or 1/4 inch, and where the bias is down to 3 mm, which is 1/8 inch, giving special attention to the bulk right here. For visibility, I'm using a contrasting thread for basting, but normally you would want to use a matching one, just in case if something gets stuck. Fold the bias tape and fold it again to fully enclose it. It must cover the previous stitch line and baste at the very edge. Fold, fold, baste. And here is how it looks from both sides. Stitch in the ditch, which basically means sewing directly into the groove. And finally, remove the basting stitch. The stitch line at 1 cm or 3/8 inch, fold along it, and fold again so that the edge lines up with the mark guide. Press and pin all the way around. Now, the top of the sleeve has a slope, so the seams won't match perfectly. Therefore, start pressing at the center and work your way out. If it's not laying flat, well, it's not a problem at all. Just scrunch it like it's intentional and call it couture. Stitch close to the folded edge, leaving a small gap. We'll need it later to insert the elastic. You may want to use an edge guide foot. It has an adjustable guide that helps us stay on track. I recommend using 2 cm wide elastic, which is 3/4. Add 2 mm if zigzag stitching, and 4 mm if reinforcing the join with a piece of fabric. From the original stitch line, elastic width, which is 2 cm, plus 2 to 4 mm. Mark all around and stitch along this new line. On both ends of the elastic, mark the same side and desired length. This will help prevent twisting. Suggested length 95% of your shoulder circumference. Thread the elastic through the tunnel, but don't cut it yet. Leaving a longer tail makes it easier to pull through. Use your fingers to feel around, just make sure the elastic is laying flat. Once it's through, baste the ends together in a loop and distribute the gathers evenly, all the way around. This elastic is what's standing between you and a wardrobe malfunction, okay? She is the one holding it all together. Give it a check, snug and comfy. We are aiming for secure, not scandalous. Well, unless... No judgment. You do you, queen. You've got 2 solid options for joining the elastic ends. A quick zigzag stitch and reinforced fabric burrito. To zigzag, overlap 2 elastic ends, making sure both marks are facing the same direction. Zigzag stitch back and forth at least twice, firmly securing both layers, and cut off any extra length of elastic. With the fabric though, place both elastic ends on a small rectangle and zigzag stitch, catching both ends securely. Fold the fabric over the join and sew around the edges in a box shape. Stitch the gap close to the machine. Straighten this region out. If the reinforced section is too bulky, hand stitch the gap closed. Yes, you've got a little bump, but come on, who doesn't? Darling, it's not a flaw, it's an elevated design. Try it on and do what you must. Adjust, sway, twist, till it gives the main character energy. Once satisfied, add a vertical rows of stitches here and there to lock the gathers in place. Go all the way down and backstitch all the way up. Try to hide between folds though. Cute. Sleeve hemline. I like to baste the hem casing first, just to test the fit. Maybe you want it shorter, or keep it relaxed. This step helps you decide before committing. Mark the elastic length. Measure your wrist and add 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch. Well, you can't really see, but fold 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch and press. This French seam, just chop off 1.5 to 2 cm off, or 3/4 of an inch. If it's a serge seam though, just leave it as it is. Give it a very much needed cut. Mark 2 cm or 3/4 of an inch from the edge. Fold, align, press and stitch along the edge, leaving a gap. I used an edge guide foot. Thread the elastic through, then pull together the sleeve hem. Hand stitch the ends together and machine stitch the gap closed, stretching as you sew. Want it short, want it long, just put it on and see what feels right for you. From the longest point of the bodice, measure down to the desired length. The skirt pattern is intentionally shorter than what you'll actually need. Why waste paper, right? From the bottom edge of the pattern, measure straight down using your chosen length. Mark it, then connect the marks. Outline the pattern and label your pieces. Front and back, right side and wrong side. On wrong side I have crosses. Then cut everything out. On the wrong side of each skirt piece, draw a guideline near the top. The distance from the edge depends on your size. Now, I have an issue, a problem if you will. I'm using two different pieces of fabric and one of them isn't wide enough. This means I have to cut and shift part of the pattern. So I did it. Slice here, slide it over there, glue together with a tape. Yes, and I'm absolutely and most definitely mixing newspapers, booklets and pattern paper. If you have exactly the same issue, make sure to also transfer the seam allowance when moving any parts. And draw the line that separates front and back. If you're serging, place both skirt pieces right sides together and serge. Or you can do a French seam, but this time there will be an extra step. Start by pinning the wrong sides together as always, but this time mark 6 centimeters from the top and 2 from the bottom. The number for the top can vary depending on your size. Stitch that middle portion between the marks at 5 millimeters, 1/4 of an inch. Then trim. Carefully clip into those marks that indicate the beginning and the end of the stitch line. Press, fold the fabric right sides together, leaving those unstitched, protruding parts free. Press the folded edge sharply and sew a second seam at 7 millimeters, which is 1/4 of an inch, from the folded edge. But this time stitch from the very top to the very bottom. After that, clip a little deeper into the seam of those marked points. Just be careful not to snip through the stitches. On the front of the bodice, draw a guideline around the bottom. The distance from the edge to this line will depend on your size. Now mark the quarter points. Start by aligning both side seams and pinning or marking the midpoint. Then align that midpoint with a side seam to find the next one. Long story short, repeat until you've divided both the front and back into 4 equal sections. From now on, I'm calling them quarters and quarter points. I use pins initially, but chalk marks are easier for the next step. Do the exact same thing with the skirt. However, remember how I had to move a part of the pattern because of fabric limitations? Yeah. This line that indicates where the original side seam was now is acting as a side seam. Align the said line with the opposite side seam to find the midpoint. Then, just like with the bodice, divide the front and back of the skirt into 4 equal sections. Pick one. If you like a serge seam better, then serge the bottom edge of the bodice. However, if cleaner yet more time-consuming finish takes your fancy, then leave the edge as it is for now. Or do both. Serge it now and hide it later. Fold and press the top edge of the skirt so it meets the guideline you previously marked on the wrong side of the fabric. Since the skirt has a slight curve, the fold won't align perfectly. Just scrunch it up a bit near the side seams. A few soft gathers will help the fabric sit nicely. Machine settings for gathering. Stitch length, the longest setting your machine allows. Tension, start at 2, but test first, see what works for your machine. You'll stitch from 1/4 mark to the next, then back, no backstitching. I'm using a contrasting thread for visibility, but you might want to use the matching thread, especially since gathering thread sometimes gets stuck in the final seam. Sew the first row of long stitches, roughly 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch from the raw edge. When you reach the next mark, keep the needle down, leave the presser foot, and pivot. Sew 2 stitches down. Again, keep the needle down, leave the presser foot and pivot, and stitch back to where you started. The distance, presser foot. You can see how it glides next to the first row of stitches. Once you are done, snip the threads, leaving the tails. Repeat 7 more times. You should end up with 2 rows of basting stitches all around. Bodice and skirt. Let's bring them together. Match up those quarter marks. I personally prefer to gather the first and last section at the table and do the rest at the sewing machine. But feel free to pre-gather everything at once. Well, it just gets too stubby for my liking. Place the skirt on top of the bodice, perfectly aligning the upper edge of the skirt with the guideline on the bodice. Match the quarter marks as well. Pull the bobbin threads together. In our case, bobbin threads are on top. Keep gathering until the skirt fits the corresponding segment of the bodice. Once you're satisfied, tie the threads in a knot to prevent the gathers from unraveling. Another way of securing the threads is to wrap them in a figure 8 around the pin. Distribute the gathers evenly and pin generously to keep it all from shifting. Start, end, alignment. Everything lined up and we're ready for the stitching. So just below the first row of basting stitches. Oh, and don't forget to return the machine to its original settings and switch to matching thread before you start. As you sew, flatten and straighten everything. When you reach the end of the segment, keep the needle down. Lift the presser foot, align the next set of marks. Pull those threads, tie a knot, start distributing, and pin everything in place. You are basically repeating the same steps, but this time at the sewing machine, except the last section. I prefer to do that one back at the table for more control. Oh, those stitches are super close. On the wrong side, you should see a flap of fabric about 2 cm or 3/4 of an inch that covers the basting stitches. Fold the flap in half, covering the second row of basting stitches, and baste along the folded edge to hold it in place. As you can see, on the front there's plenty of space between green and orange basting stitches. If you serged the bottom of the bodice earlier, don't fold it. Just lay it flat and baste it down. Stitch just below the second row of green stitches to secure the inner flap. Go slow, straighten as you go, and take your time. When you're done, put a movie on and start removing all those basting stitches. Yeah, there is a lot, like a lot, but so worth it. Just look how beautiful and secure it is. Oh, I love it. Gently press the gathers. Pull the skirt slightly while pressing to kind of even out the gathering. Now for the skirt hemline. Start by trimming off all those loose threads all around the bottom edge. Fold the hem up so the raw edge meets the start of the French seam. Press all around. Fold it again by the same amount and press once more. Finally, stitch along the inner folded edge and seal the deal with the heat. Boom! Nice, beautiful, well done. But there are some extras if you want. Removable straps you can mix, match and swap. A fast way to snatch the waist without drama. And a pocket that knows its place. Let's talk removable straps. Play around, experiment, make it your way. The pattern is designed for the V shape in the front, and it's long enough for just that, plus an extra centimeter or 3/8 of an inch. But please, I'm begging you, test those straps before cutting the final fabric. What I mean is, you have to mold those straps to your shoulders, because there's nothing, and I mean nothing, that pulls them down. The straps on the pattern, just a suggestion. You'll need 2 pairs of straps, mirrored 4 pieces total, interfacing for 2 of them, lightweight plastic snap patterns. I usually go for metal, but this time I'm keeping it light. Apply interfacing to the wrong side of 2 strap pieces. Trace around the straps and cut out the interfacing to match. Pin each pair of straps right sides together and stitch around the edge with a 7mm or 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, leaving the bottom open. Clip the corners and bottom edges and trim down the seam. I'm using pinning shears. To turn the straps inside out, pinch 2 layers to separate them and use a blunt tool to push it through. Push out the corners and shape them up neatly. No need to be perfect though. Those corners won't be visible anyways. Press this fabric sausage roll. I have a 3 cm wide ruler just like the strap. I use it to shape the edges nice and crisp. So yeah, give it a really good flattening session. Fold in the open ends and hand stitch them closed. Top stitch all the way around the edge to make them look even sharper. Use an edge guide foot for that. And when you hit the thicker area like the ends, hand turn the wheel. The bottom of the strap is straight more or less. The top is diagonal and the curve goes inward. That's the outer edge and that's the inner edge. To create these straps, place one strap on top of the other, aligning the fronts. Stitch them together in a diamond shape following the edges, sewing into the previous top stitching. To keep the presser foot level on bulky seams, slide a little scrap of folded fabric behind. And voila! Nice, clean and sharp! Mark where the straps should be attached. For the V-strap, align the front side seams to find the midline. I've already marked mine with a thread. The flat part of the snap button goes on the bodice, and the one with a leg goes on the straps. You'll need 2 snaps per strap and mark the placement carefully. These plastic snaps are super light. They have like no impact on the ruffle, so it stands tall and proud, always ready to safeguard your dignity, aka your cleavage. Just make sure to sew only through one layer of the fabric for the clean look on the outside. On the back, measure an equal distance from each side seam and mark. Hand stitch the snap buttons where the elastic is. If you make your own straps of whatever shape, length or width, keep it under 3 cm or 1 1/8 of an inch, as wider straps will mess with the elastic stretch. It's beautifully curved on the body, and it's such a lovely decor. And remember, the straps are here for a commitment-free relationship. Moving to elasticated waist. Maybe you're not very happy with the waistline. Maybe you want it more snatched. Then you need an elastic. Choose elastic that feels comfortable on your waist. It's a quick and dirty way of making the waist more snatched. I don't think this dress warrants a hidden corset or belt. This elastic is way wider than the shirring, but it's okay. Shirred is cute, don't get me wrong, but it's no match for a solid piece of elastic. Put the dress on inside out, pull the elastic around your waist, and adjust its placement, as well as the dress itself until it feels right. Mark the top edge of the elastic placement, and even that outline at the table. Divide both the elastic loop and the waistline into quarters and pin them together. Set your machine to a straight stitch length 1.5 and ensure your bobbin is full. Stretch as you sew, stitching along both the top and bottom edges of the elastic. And don't forget to backstitch for extra security. Yes, it looks ugly. And it's slightly visible on the outside. But guess what? It works. And it looks amazing when worn. Even better with a belt, or a corset, or a full harness. Don't just wear it. Make it art. Pocket holder. To keep the pocket from wandering off, I use a thin ribbon as a holder. Hand stitch one end of the ribbon to the pocket, kind of wrapping the seam. Attach the other end either to the elastic itself or the bodice, near the last row of stitching. Make sure the ribbon has some slack, it shouldn't be tight. The waist needs room to stretch, without yanking on the pocket. That's it. You are done. Go be fabulous!